Hey everybody, welcome to the Dungeoncast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Will.
This is the podcast where we talk about everything Dungeons and Dragons, from boring bogs to bold boys. And today, we're talking about Dhampeers.
Yeah, vampires. All right, Brian, so vampires. I'm sure you know what a vampire is.
I do. I'm actually this is probably the topic we've done that I'm the most familiar with.
Okay.
But I have no 5e knowledge about vampires.
Okay.
I just have like general pop knowledge about vampires.
I would say in a lot of ways, Dungeons and Dragons vampires are really your standard vampire. I think in a lot of ways, creators of D&D really didn't put a lot of like lore work into vampires because everyone knows what a vampire is.
Yeah, there's so much already.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty stable about what a vampire should be, the main features, I feel like.
Yes.
So I expect to hear all about them.
Yes, and you will. And you're absolutely right about that. One thing that I feel is not concrete and not well fleshed out in either real mythology or D&D mythology is kind of like vampiric origins. I had to really dig and like trying to figure out like, well, where do these guys come from? Because like everything else in D&D has an origin. Yeah. And I did find some semi-answers. But what do you know about vampires outside of D&D when it comes to their origin? Do you know much of anything there?
Well, in the Stephen King universe, they're like a great beyond creature.
Okay, that's a very interesting take. I know you've told me about that, where they're almost like an elder one.
Yeah, there's like a tier system that he sets up where like you have these lower vampires are like mosquitoes, like your foot guys that don't create more vampires, they're just feeders.
Right. And
then you have like these type 2s that I believe can make mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. And then you have type 1s.
They're not called mosquitoes, are they?
They're referred to in the books as mosquitoes, because they're much like a mosquito, where they're like mostly just mindless. Harmless, yeah. Right. And they're normal people during the day, and they just like go into this vampiric state at night, and they don't remember it, but they have the need to feed, and it's like very primal, right? So then the type 2s, they're more aware of what they're doing, I believe, and then the type 1s are very, very dangerous, very, very. Probably not. I've heard you talk about Dracula in like Castlevania. Probably not that powerful, but approaching a power level that's like, it's very severe. And then you have the grandfathers or the elder vampires that can make type 1 vampires. Okay. So I read Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and that's deals with a type 1 vampire that takes over a small town. Right. And it just like, it spirals out of control so quickly. Like it starts very slow because you got one foot soldier like wandering around, and then all of a sudden a couple nights go by and it's just the town is lost and nobody knew about it. It's pretty crazy.
Okay. In D&D, there is a much smaller tier system that is similar. You have what are called vampire spawn and just regular vampires. I would argue that there is a third tier above that, although there aren't really stats for it and it's not really in the lore. It's just that D&D has their own. Well, first, so vampire spawns are created by vampires. Okay. And they're kind of like your mosquitoes, but they're a little more harmful than that. They do have their own agency. They know they're vampires. They are vampires or evil. Okay. But they are enthralled to their creator. And they can't create more vampires. And I think their power, their different powers are much more limited than a normal vampire. Okay. And the only way for them to become a normal vampire is if their creator lets them drink some of his or her blood. And then at that point, they have their own agency. They kind of move up a tier and they become a full-fledged vampire.
Nice. Okay.
Now, I would argue that there are some vampires that are a lot more powerful than your standard vampire because D&D has their own version of Dracula. His name is Strahd von Zarovich.
Okay, cool.
And we won't talk too much about him, although it's hard not to talk about him in the vampire episode. But the reason I don't want to talk too much about him is we will talk about him very, very extensively in our Castle Ravenloft episode, because Castle Ravenloft is a campaign setting. It's like the gothic horror campaign setting of D&D, and he is like the center of all that.
Sweet. Okay.
But Strahd von Zarovich is leaps and bounds more powerful than your regular vampire, which is already very powerful, and he's considered the original vampire, much like Dracula.
Yeah, your Dracula types.
Yeah, and so
Nosferatu.
Yeah, your Nosferatu, and there are some other possible origins for vampires. I've seen where there was a book I was reading for D&D where it was basically like the first vampire was the result of a succubi's kiss of death. Okay. And for some unexplained reason, it rose up and became a vampire. And like this could make some sense because like there are a lot of shared similarities between succubi and vampire. Okay, yeah. There's
like that enthrallment,
the enthrallment, the alluring charm. the bat wings, I guess, because like vampires can turn into bats in D&D.
Right. That's a pretty standard. Like Dracula supposedly could turn into like a flock of bats or just one bat. It's unclear.
Yeah.
At the time.
The feeding on life force, where it's like it's even said like vampires feed on the life force of humans. They just do that through the blood.
Right.
It's like not the actual physical thing of blood that they need. It's whatever magical properties they're getting from it.
Yeah, it's like a metaphor. Like you're powered by your blood or whatever. Your heart pumps it.
Which is actually interesting that like the thing that they desire is like this physical symbol of life force, because there's so many things about vampires in D&D that they're constantly craving physical symbols of something not physical, which we'll get into when it comes to like all the very like dark desires.
Do you remember that episode of SpongeBob with the hash slinging slasher?
Very vaguely.
At the very end, they're like, it was like they were explaining everything that was going on, all these weird phenomenons, and they're like, but what about the lights? How are the lights flicking on and off? And they go to the corner and it's like a Nosferatu flicking the lights on and off.
Oh yes, I do
like,
remember
Nosferatu.
That's so stupid.
I'm like, what the fuck?
I love SpongeBob. And sometimes it's just considered like a necromantic ritual, like an alternative to lichdom for like a wizard. Like they want to be immortal.
Okay, cool.
But maybe they don't got what it takes to become a lich. Well, you could become a vampire.
Okay, so it's magic related, obviously.
It could be magic related, yeah. Which
a
lot of like undeath and all these weird transformation things are.
Yeah, like skeleton ligaments.
The Strahd von Zarovich thing works really well because, here's real quick, Strahd. Dracula was a count. Strahd's a baron. So
okay, there we go.
That is. So basically, Strahd was a baron of some land. He was a warlord, kind of ruthless, and he fell in love with a woman. I can't remember the details here, but the woman actually loved his brother, and she got married to him, and he got pissed off, and like he did a lot of really bad shit. He drove her to suicide, killed his own brother, did some weird ritual with he formed an alliance with the dark powers of the Shadowfell.
Sure.
And
the Shadowfell. Okay.
Shadowfell, yeah, and the dark powers granted him immortality.
Oh, sweet. Nice. Good deal.
By turning him into a vampire. Okay, the first vampire.
Great. All right.
And the Dark Powers then kind of use Strahd as their own pawn. Now, he has his own agency, but the Dark Powers are leaps and bounds more powerful than him. And they basically drew his whole region into a demiplane called Barovia, which is just the name of the region.
Right.
And like no one can escape Barovia. And Barovia is constantly being tyrannized by Strahd.
Okay, cool.
Complete control of the region, but he cannot leave. So he in his own way is a slave. We'll talk more about that.
So this is drawing a lot of parallels to like the Count Dracula original story.
Very much so.
Yeah,
very much
like
so.
The Transylvania, all of it.
Yeah, with Vlad the Impaler and all that. Yeah. And we'll talk more about that in the Kessel Ravenloft episode. But the reason that I like this Dark Powers origin is because vampires are undead, which we know the Shadowfell has a lot of undead things going on. Vampires, unlike a lot of other undead, do have sunlight sensitivity. A lot of other undead don't actually have that. And that makes sense since the Shadowfell is so anti-light.
Right.
Another thing, too, is that like vampires are very much evil, but they don't seem like tied to like a lawful alignment or a chaotic alignment. They're more like a neutral evil, but they could go either way.
Whatever serving their purposes.
So they don't really fit in with other fiends.
Okay.
And they don't really fit in with other undead either. They don't operate the same way.
So you really could be like, have a campaign, vampires versus werewolves, because those seem like their own factions.
Yeah, very much so. Except for like when we get into the stats, man, vampires are fucking so much powerful.
It would have to be like numbers.
It would have to be a numbers thing, or you have to homebrew some stuff. Because I think a werewolf, a lycanthrope werewolf, is CR5. Your standard vampire is like CR13.
Sweet.
And has legendary actions and has regional and layer effects.
Right.
Like,
I remember you telling me about that.
Way more powerful.
Definitely cool.
And then here's another thing too, is like with all this mystery surrounding the vampires and like where the fuck they come from, isn't it fitting that their origin would be another thing which is shrouded in mystery, the Dark Powers, which most of us know nothing about because there's nothing written about them in any lore outside of Castle Ravenloft, really.
Okay.
So like, I kind of like that. It kind of makes sense. So here's the thing. We talked about in the lycanthrope episode about how lycanthropy is inherently evil a lot of times and how it can change your alignment. And
unless you're a bear.
Unless you're a bear. Well, it'll change you to good? ? I don't know, because
Yeah, that's interesting. We didn't really talk. About that. If it changes you too good,
right?
Or if you like
what if
needed
you were
to be
evil,
good,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know about that, but vampirism is very, very similar. Where like, yeah, you're going to turn evil, and we talked in the lycanthropy episode about how I'm not really a big fan of like your alignment being changed against your will, and I still stand by that. Except for with vampirism. With vampirism, I would say you should absolutely turn evil as fuck. And here's why.
Here's your pass.
Number one, undead pretty much means evil in D&D. There are very few exceptions, but I'm not considering vampires one of them, because with vampirism, the vampire itself is not the person who was before.
Right.
It is a different being. That person died, and something else lives in that body now.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
It has their memories.
Needed the shell.
Yeah, it has their memories, and it can like tap into those same emotions, but everything is twisted and wrong because whatever is in them is twisted and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that like their alignment changed; it's that that's not the same person anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's my argument, anyways. So what happens is they end up becoming like a sick parody of whatever they were. And like all their emotions kind of take an evil twist. So like, let's say they were in love with somebody, that might turn into like some weird abusive like obsession with that person now.
Okay.
Not because there's any actual love there, but because it's twisted that emotion into like, I have to have you in your mind and no one else can have you. And
For sure.
Trap you in my chambers and maybe transform you into one of my spawn. Like, you know, and I'll always have you and I'll hold you and grasp you. And like, that's how vampires are. They're very greedy, very jealous, very lustful. Like, yeah, they're nasty creatures.
Gross.
Yeah, they're horrible. They're horrible creatures. Friendship might turn into straight up hatred or jealousy. Like,
don't be gross, Dracula.
Don't be gross. Dracula is gross.
Especially Vlad the Impaler. And that guy was super gross.
Right. And like I was saying, they crave physical symbols of the things in life that they treasured. Like, and it can be just simple, like just money. Like they just want more money. And like a lot of times vampires will like infiltrate society and get into like high situations, society, and just like
rule the plane,
rule it. You know, start a monopoly.
Okay,
just fuck over the economy.
Damn.
Like, yeah, no, vampires are evil on a lot of different levels. They'll collect fine art.
They're Wall Street
beautiful
evil.
Lovers, even though like they won't love these lovers, they'll end up killing them. But they have to have them because in life, that's what they craved.
Right. So it's really dependent on your shell a little bit what kind of evil's about to sprout out, what direction they're going to go in.
Very much so. Very much so. That sometimes they'll collect trophies of their former enemies.
Oh, dude, that's like some kind of like chaos theory, like butterfly effect sort of thing. That's nasty.
Yeah. It's pretty weird shit, man. So I don't know. Do you got any questions about vampires so far before we dive into some of this other stuff?
I mean, that's some cool like D&D. Like I feel like a lot of these big topics we touch on are just like I would like, okay, this is what's going on in my campaign. Like, there's no way, like, how can I cram all of it into one campaign, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure people do, and you can, and it's probably a great way to do it. But I can't fathom it. There's just you can go so deep with just this. I mean, if you play
absolutely.
If you play for like years and years, and you have the same party or people die off or whatever, but the same ongoing thing, and you're like, okay, now we're doing this.
Yeah, and that's okay, because I mean, D&D doesn't have to be any one of anything. Like you can have a D&D world where like, well, vampires and the undead don't exist in my world.
For sure.
Like, period, end of story. And that won't really affect much of anything. Or you could have entire D&D campaigns that have nothing but vampires, zombies, and werewolves, like just gothic horror, and that's all you do. I mean, I've seen whole D&D campaigns that run just inside one city, and your levels 1 to 15 just doing shit in that city.
Right.
It's a big metropolitan area, and a lot of shit goes down. So, like, D&D can be whatever you want it to be. You don't have to use any of this stuff, but here it is.
You want to take a rest?
Yeah, I think it's time.
Let's
take
a
rest.
Hey everybody, welcome to the part of the episode where we stop talking about the last thing, scary stuff. Yeah, let's talk talk about you guys. Thanks, guys, for listening to the show and watching the show and coming out and supporting the show. Thank you so much. We really appreciate everybody that's been tweeting at us, tweeting about the show, getting on iTunes and leaving those reviews. And you can win a contest that we're running right now from doing those exact things I just mentioned. Will, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we're giving away 2 copies of Xanathor's Guide to Everything, which is going to be a D&D supplement book, which is going to have something like 20 new subclasses, a bunch of new background stuff, possibly some new races. I'm not quite sure on that. It's going to be a really big mechanical
power
edition.
Locks, power windows,
yeah,
power
of
steering.
course, all the bells and whistles. I think it's a must buy personally.
Yeah, free XM radio for a year.
We are giving away 2 of these books. And the way you enter is all you got to do is tweet out a link to our show with hashtag Dungeoncast and or leave us an iTunes review.
That would be super awesome.
You do either of those things, you'll be entered. If you do both, you'll be entered twice.
Yeah, and like if you just want to do them, like a bunch, like maybe not the same person, but like if a bunch of you listening want to do it, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
You can follow us on YouTube if you want. Catch our stuff there. Leave a like and subscribe if you are already there. That would be awesome. And you can find us on SoundCloud.com/TheDungeonCast. You can get us on iTunes, as we've mentioned, or any podcast app for that matter. But that's pretty much it. I think this rest was...
No, that's not quite
wait,
it.
what do we got?
We also...
Will, what else is there?
We've also started a Patreon.
That's right. Well, as of now...
I know it's new, but
as we're recording this, it hasn't launched yet.
Because
we're ahead of the game.
We are.
We're ahead of the game, but it's set to launch and will have launched and have been out for a little bit now.
Yeah, I think so.
Get on there. There's so much good bonus content. I've been working my ass off.
Yeah, you have. If you like what we do here, you'll probably really like what we do there. And if you just want to support us, you could do that through Patreon. We'd really, really appreciate it.
I think our $1 tier gets you a shout out on the show, which I think is pretty cool.
And access to all my really sporadic and messy show notes.
Yeah, they're pretty. I like reading over them again.
But yeah, other than that, I think now it's time to get back to the show.
Let's go back now.
All right, Brian. So
vampires.
We talked about how vampires are incredibly powerful.
Vampires.
Let's talk about exactly how powerful. So in D&D, vampires have a whole myriad of power sets. They can do all kinds of stuff. Number 1, when someone gets transformed into a vampire, all of their ability scores shoot the fuck up, and basically almost everything's an 18.
That's what it says in the monster manual, right?
It says
shoot the ability score,
up.
shoot that shit the fuck up.
Yeah,
all the way.
That's basically what it says. I mean, they get an 18 dex, 18 strength, 18 charisma, 17 wisdom, and 18 intelligence, and
Holy
an 18.
Shit.
Yeah, it's just they become incredibly powerful, supernaturally powerful. They also gain number 1, they're immortal. They don't have to breathe. They can transform. They have actually multiple forms. In 5th edition, there's only 2 forms outside of being just a humanoid vampire. One is they can transform into a bat. And the other is they can actually have a mist or gaseous form.
Oh.
And that form is very important because that's the form that's going to make them incredibly fucking hard to kill.
Yeah, you don't want to breathe that in.
Because killing a vampire is incredibly hard to
they can
do
turn
permanently.
into fucking gas.
Well, not only
hit you with my sword.
Yeah, not only can they turn into gas, but they by default transform into gas the second they hit 0 HP. And they then have to get back to their resting place, and after spending, I think, an hour or so there, they can start regenerating HP and turn back into normal form.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
that's annoying as hell.
Incredibly hard to kill.
Unless you use the Mafuba.
What the fuck is that?
The evil containment wave.
Oh, there you go.
And Master Roshi puts evil people in jars.
Yeah, there you go. That probably work.
And then throw it in some, just dip it in holy water.
There you go. Although holy water isn't exactly a thing, there are other weaknesses.
I do want to talk about how vampires are killed. As a chunk.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
there. I just want to run through their power.
Yeah,
their power set.
Let's finish.
They have regeneration, which means every round they're just gaining HP. They can summon swarms of rats or bats to come help them at any given time.
God, what is it with D&D and rats?
I don't know.
They just really using them.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, I think lately we've just tapping into the lore that does.
Let me just summon a bunch of they're all the rats from Mission Impossible. That fucking fat ass rat in the vent.
That movie I still haven't seen.
Oh man, I YouTube the part for that.
You
part
did.
For you. It's just this big
rat.
Ass nasty rat.
There you go. Yeah, just a bunch of those.
All of those.
In previous editions of D&D, vampires could also transform into dire rats, dire bats, and dire wolves. And normal wolves. And they could just transform into any of these animals.
Dire rats were capybara sized, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We've decided that the dire rat is the size of a capybara. They get legendary actions.
Okay.
Which is just extra shit they can do on their turn. They have the inherent ability to charm all humanoids. They can create spawn, which are then enthralled to them and will do their bidding no matter what.
Sick.
That can't be broken. I think that's it for the power sets for the most part. They're also so inherently like magically infused with the power of undeath, if you will, that like they affect their region when they've made a lair. And so like kind of everything within 500 feet of their lair, like something happens. Like the wolf, rat, and bat populations just boom.
Okay, cool.
All the better for the swarming.
You become a fucking Halloween Hallmark card.
That's exactly what you know. I'm shit you know. That's basically what you become. Because the next thing that happens is all plants within 500 feet of the lair die and just become really thorny.
Oh, cool, sweet.
And then like shadows within 500 feet of the lair just act strangely. And then a creeping fog hangs about the lair and just looks spooky.
Just like super standard.
That's part of what it does. It looks spooky, like weird images will appear in the fog, like of a clawed hand or like of a raven in flight.
That's cool.
You really do become a Halloween trademark.
Sweet.
So there it is. And also all those effects last, even if you kill the vampire, they still last an extra 2d6 worth of days afterwards.
Oh shit.
So, yeah. So there that is.
So you're just like fighting at the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Basically.
Cool.
But let's talk about weaknesses. One major weakness.
Wait, can I just
you
like
cut in?
I want to throw out like the stuff I would normally do to kill vampires, and we'll see if
yay or nay. Go for it.
Wooden stake to the heart.
Will not kill a vampire, but will paralyze one temporarily.
Sweet. Oh, temporarily? How long?
An hour, maybe.
If you're lucky, you get an hour. If you use the blessed rosewood.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, vials of holy water. Like just smash them on them.
There's nothing mechanical in there. I would argue that it would do a little bit of damage.
Just some like,
what the fuck, bro?
Stop!
I just watched these. Okay, go ahead. What next?
Okay, cloves of garlic.
Okay, so in a lot of the lore, it'll repel them a little bit, but in the actual mechanics, nothing mentioned.
Okay, like a priest with a holy symbol. I guess in D&D it would be a holy symbol.
Nope.
No crosses, nothing like that.
None of that. No.
Do I got any more good ones? I'm guessing. I don't think this is. I think silver, like a silver stake to the heart, might be a thing.
No.
I'm thinking in D&D it's not a thing. No silver.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Am I out of stuff? The man Van Helsing.
No.
Okay, not particularly weak to Van Helsing.
No, okay. Not at all. Okay.
Yeah.
You got any more?
Oh wait. Well, we've already kind of decided that werewolves wouldn't cut it in D&D.
No, they really wouldn't, which makes me mad. But
yeah. Oh well.
What are you gonna do? Okay, so let's talk about weaknesses.
Okay.
The main one, well, not the main one, but the main one that like I thought was interesting is they are true, and this is in normal vampire mythology, I think as well. They're truly anchored to the place they died.
Oh.
Or more the place they were put to rest. They
haunted.
Have to have their coffin nearby, and it has to be buried in soil where they were put to rest. So if they want to move somewhere, they have to transfer all that shit.
Interesting.
And I think you see this happen in some of Bram Stoker's Dracula stuff. When Dracula has to move, I think he comes to London, he moves a bunch of his earth and stuff.
Interesting.
So I think that's right.
Interesting.
So I thought that was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting. So one of the keys to slaying a vampire permanently is finding where the resting spot is and fucking that shit up.
Cool.
We're gonna sleep now, bitch. So yeah, there's
Burn your coffin, motherfucker.
That's one way to do it. They have to be invited in homes. That's a thing. So they have the weakness of invitation, if you will.
Cool.
Running water is a major weakness of these guys.
Running water
does like 20 acid damage around to them. Like,
okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, killing a vampire in running water is a permanent kill. Instant permanent kill. Running water. Like, find a river, dunk that bitch and stab him.
Well, is a vampire aware of that? Because like
yes.
You know that motherfucker's is like not even close to a river.
Yeah, I'd go to a desert.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you want people. I guess you're gonna have to be kind of close to water.
What constitutes running water? Like, what if I got what
if I throw like a bucket of water? Or
what if I threw you in an irrigation ditch? Like,
yeah, I think
does that count?
As long as it's running.
Yeah. So there it is. Sunlight sensitivity. It does like 20 radiant damage per round to them. Now, a question of mine is like, does this transfer to radiant damage, like from like spells and stuff? I would argue no. But I would maybe have radiant damage do something a little special. I'm not sure what. Because if you make them just weak to it, that might be too powerful. Because radiant damage is very easy to come by.
Well, is radiant damage considered like sunlight?
It's considered light without a doubt.
Okay.
So there are. I think there's literally like the spell sunlight.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
Fuck a vampire up.
Okay, like because I was like, oh, maybe it's just the UV.
Yeah, maybe it's just the UV.
They just don't like UV.
Yeah, they don't mind torchlight, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's that, but yeah, sunlight will fuck them up. And if you kill a vampire in sunlight, insta kill.
Sweet.
We talked about the stake to the heart could paralyze them. So that's like,
So can you just like every 30 minutes just like drive a brand new stake in?
You could, yeah. I guess that's one way to do it.
Just like really get a bunch in there.
Another way to kill a vampire is if you kill it and it goes into its gaseous form and it can't make it to its resting place within, I think, an hour, it will permanently die.
Oh.
So that's another thing. Like, so if you fuck up its resting place, it's super vulnerable at that point.
Yeah, it can't really go down like that.
Also, I think it has a time limit. Like, it has to every 12 to 24 hours go and sleep in its coffin. So if that's destroyed, like, yeah.
Sweet.
There you go.
Okay, so there's a few like pretty good ways to kill a vampire.
So but that's the thing. A vampire is going to keep their resting place under
they're aware of
super
this.
lock and key, really hidden away and all that stuff.
Deep in the morgue.
Yeah. So any other questions when it comes to these weaknesses?
So we're back to like there's nothing that really deals double damage to it necessarily.
Yeah, welcome to 5e.
Yeah,
so
okay.
There it is. What I find interesting about some of these weaknesses, and we talked a little bit about this in the Fae episode, how like a lot of the weaknesses for things that were Fae were things that were really mundane.
Yes.
It's kind of similar when it comes to vampires, because I think like, okay, so a lot of this lore originates from like old like Eastern European mythology amongst like the commoners of these societies, and like built into the lore, these commoners are going to have like ways to circumvent the danger of these monsters, and it's going to be really mundane things they have access to, like garlic.
Yes, they were people like coating their homes in garlic.
Yeah,
there were people
garlic.
that really
or like
did that.
even just like, well, if you're in your house, though, you're okay. Like that part of the mythology. If you're in your house, you're cool.
Yeah.
Or if you're totally carrying garlic, you're all right.
Shove garlic in all the cracks.
As long as you get back across the river to the village, you'll be okay. Like those ideas, I kind of like that. There's a certain charm to that.
Yeah, don't trust any rats that look like they could have been casted in Mission Impossible.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about Dhampeers, which is a really shitty name.
I'm sorry? What was that?
Dhampeers.
Dhampeers.
Or Dhampeers or whatever.
Okay, fuck. What?
They're daywalkers. They're Blade's a Dhampeer.
Oh, you mean they haven't been like soaked in liquids?
No, they're what?
Dhampeers?
Oh, damn. Oh, Jesus. No. It's a really shitty name for something kind of cool.
Hell yeah. Well, I don't know about the kind of cool part.
Blade's
Convince
cool.
me. It's really shitty right now.
So the way a Dhampeer is born is...
Are you fucking kidding me? It's called a Dhampeer.
Dhampirs.
Oh, they just threw an H in there.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So Dhampeers.
Dhampeers.
Anyways, they're born when a pregnant woman is bitten by a vampire. And if she dies or even turned into a vampire, the thing that is born will be basically the equivalent of like a half vampire.
Okay.
They won't be as strong. They will have the thirst for blood. They can resist it. They're not necessarily evil. They might err on the side of evil. They can walk during the day. Like they're a little give and take.
They're just like this weird gray area.
And there shouldn't be a lot of them because of the way they're born.
Right.
There's another way they could be born, and it's said if a male vampire lies with a mortal woman, that's a way that like she could be impregnated that way. I'm not a huge fan of that because I'm like, well, the vampire's dead. He shouldn't be impregnating anybody. Plus, I just don't see vampires really like desiring that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like they're evil, life-sucking creatures. But in defense of this, because I don't think it's too terrible of an idea, in old Slavic mythology, it's kind of built in the lore that vampires like to fuck. So it's just a thing they do.
Vampires, they like to fuck.
Exactly. Like they come into your house, they seduce your wives, and then they steal off to the night.
Fuck.
And then a Dhampeer is born.
It's fucking Dhampeers. Because when it's born, you're like, damn.
Exactly. Damn, this
that's this damn vampire.
Yeah, indeed.
Vampire.
So in 4th edition, they had a vampiric type race called Vrylocka, which they're kind of okay. You know how we talked about tieflings? How,
moist pyres.
What?
Sorry? No, go ahead.
Remember how we talked about tieflings? How like they made a deal with Asmodeus and like the bloodline was kind of cursed.
Yes.
With Vrylocka, they made a deal with being called the Red Witch, which gave them like some vampiric abilities.
That's a cool name.
But they're not actual vampires.
Okay.
And they're technically undead.
They're like zombies? They're like witch doctor zombies?
They're like vampires without having to be evil or needing to feed, basically.
Oh. So
I don't
just
know.
All the bonuses.
All the bonuses.
All the pluses.
Yeah, plus they have to hide in mortal society because like people don't like them because they're undead.
Yeah.
They're scary.
Okay, yeah, sure.
One of the hallmarks about them is they're really pale skin. For some reason, they got like these fiery red hair. That's just a thing with them.
Okay. So an Irish person.
Yeah, I guess so. That's basically it. They're pseudo vampires there in 4th edition. They were kind of cool, but it's like
so not in 5th edition.
Not in 5th edition yet. They might.
All right.
5th edition being as traditional as it is, I wouldn't be surprised if we get Dhampeers instead.
Okay.
So for me, I get the desire for wanting to like have a character that's vampiric or is a vampire, but like because of the lore and because of the way I view vampires, it's not really a thing I allow in my games. Okay. And you know me, I'm not the kind of guy who disallows a lot.
Yeah.
I'm super open. And I'm not knocking anyone who totally allows this because like there's plenty of vampire lore where vampires aren't evil. Fuck, Underworld is one where they're basically people with blood-sucking abilities. So,
yeah, they're super lawful.
Right. They're like much more organized.
Trying to like balance shit.
So like it really comes down to your world lore. But in mine, like I can work with a lycanthrope character. I'm not really going to work with a vampire character because in my world, again, like the thing is about vampires is you're no longer a human or an elf or whatever you were. Something else inhabits that body. And I think that's scarier. And I think that's more deadly.
Sure.
And so I'm not too big on vampiric PC characters.
Yeah.
And as of right now, 5th edition doesn't really give you anything when it comes to running a
yeah, that would be a homebrew job for sure.
Yeah,
I can kind of see the Red Witch vampires kind of being a thing.
Yeah, like, if Vrylocka become like an official 5th edition race, I'd more than welcome them. Sure. I mean, it's a very small subset, so like you're gonna be very rare, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, cool. Adventurers. Yeah, you know.
So, and honestly, if I had a player who's like, I really want to play a Vrylocka, it's like, all right, we'll homebrew it.
Let's do it.
For Vrylocka, a +2 strength, +2 charisma, +1 strength, like yada yada yada. We'll figure out.
Yeah, we'll do PC. We'll do PC vampires and maybe another time.
Yeah, sure. Other than that, you got any other questions about vampires?
God. No.
Okay. All right. I mean, y'all know what a vampire is. That we've gone over the official 5th edition lore on them. So there it is, vampires.
Sweet. Let's call
it a game. All right. We'll talk to you guys later.